Hi everyone, welcome back. Now that we've finished assembling everything, we're ready to start making the beer. So the first step is to add some water to the boiler, and the amount of water you need to add is dependent on how much grain you're using in your recipe. So to work out how much water you need, use the following calculation. So for today's recipe, I'm filling the boiler up with 20.5 litres of water because my grain weight is 6.3 kilograms. So I'm just adding the water to the boiler now. And if you look on the side of the boiler, there's a scale there for you to check how much water you've added. So I'm just at 20.5 litres now, and it's time for me to plug my controller in. Now just take note, before we plug the controller into the wall, always make sure that you have a fitting on the end of this discharge pipe. So I've just plugged my controller into the wall now, and as you can see it's turned on. So I'll just explain to you how this control box works. So you've got a clear lid on the top, just lift that up. On the right you've got a switch here, which is your mash boil switch. Currently it's in the off position. Flick it to boil if you want to boil. Currently we're in the mash stage, so I'll flick it over to mash. Moving over to the left, you've got your pump switch, that's just simple on and off. Down below is your temperature display screen. So for this recipe, I need to mash at 68 degrees. So I just press the set button, hold it down for 3 seconds. The set light will come on. Then I just press the up arrow to get to 68. And once I'm there, I just press set, hold it down for 3 seconds again. And the work light will come on, and as you can currently see, the water's at 52 degrees, and as the water heats up, once it gets to 68, it'll just stay there. So just moving down to the base of the unit, there's another little switch here, and this is called the element variation switch, and I'll just explain this to you. This unit has a 2 kilowatt element, and that's great to get up to temperature really quickly, but while we're doing a mash and we want to keep the temperature really stable, it's better if we use less power. So there's 2 settings that can be in, mash and normal. If it's flicked on mash, it's only using 500 watts. If it's flicked on normal, it's using 2 kilowatts. So I want the water to heat up really quickly, so I'll put it on normal now, 2 kilowatts, and it will heat up fast. So I'm currently at 62 degrees Celsius, my controller is set to mash, the element variation switch is set to normal to heat up quickly, and to help speed this up, I'll just put the glass lid on top and just wait till it gets to 68 degrees Celsius. So as my water is heating up, I'm just going to insert the inner basket into the boiler. And for this, I just need to make sure that the overflow pipe on top is fully extended. So now I'll drop my inner basket into the boiler. Let it sit there, and just take one of your overflow pipe lids and pop it over the top of the overflow top pipe. This is just to prevent any grain from entering into that pipe when we get to adding the grain. So I'll slowly start adding my grain, and it's important just to do this very slowly and stir, keep stirring it so you don't get any dry clumps forming. So for this you'll also need a paddle. And just keep adding the grain slowly around and keep stirring the mash as you do so. Just making sure you get no dry clumps. So I've finished adding all the grain now, and I've stirred as I've done so, and as you can see I've got this kind of mash consistency where you can see some of the grain is kind of porridgey. It's not too wet, but it's wet enough, and this is exactly what you want. If it's too dry, you can always add a little bit more water, but just take note of how much water you are adding. So next I will install the perforated plate. So I'll just remove the lid over the top, place it aside. Take the top perforated plate, make sure the seal is nicely intact around the edge. Hold it by the lugs over there and just push it down onto, and top overflow pipe should just go through the hole there, and just push it down until you get to your mash. Don't compress it too much. Then get your overflow inlet block and just insert that into the top overflow pipe and push that down also, and that should just fit into the hole on the top perforated plate. Now just take your glass lid, pop that on top of the boiler, take your recirculation pipe and pull the plastic knob back. Take one of the round O-rings, place that over the top of the pipe, and push that up onto the wall there, and push the plastic knob over the top of that. Take your silicone hose and push that over the barbed part. Now you can remove the brass knob on the discharge pipe. Place that aside, and the silicone hose just pops through the glass hole in the glass lid there and rests on the perforated plate, and the recirculation pipe just screws onto the end of the discharge pipe, and just screw that on. Make sure it's nice and tight, and we'll be ready to start mashing now. I'm just going to leave the element variation switch on normal at this stage, on the 2 kilowatt, because the grains I've added are at a much colder temperature, at room temperature, than the mash water of 68 degrees. So I'll turn the pump on and start recirculating the wort. And initially, all the water from the bottom will just start recirculating through the grains, heating the grains up to the mash temperature, and after about 5 minutes or so everything should stay consistent, and this is when you can switch the element variation switch over to mash. So my temperature is at 68 degrees now. It's been stable at 68 degrees for about a minute. This tells me that the temperature inside of the grain bed is at 68 degrees Celsius. So I'm just going to flick my element variation switch over to mash, and this will mean I'm only using 500 watts on the element, and I'll leave it on mash for the entire mash cycle. So the mash is going really well now, and while this is going, it's a good time for me to start heating up my sparge water, because when I get to sparging, I will need the water to be at 75 degrees Celsius. So I've filled up this urn here, and I'll let this heat up, so when the time mashing's done, this will already be heated to 75 degrees. And you can use the following calculation to work out how much sparge water you need. If you do not have an urn to heat up sparge water, there is something you can do. Before adding the mash water and before doing anything to start making the beer, first add about 18 litres of water into the boiler and bring that up to the boil. Once it's at the boil, add your recirculation pipe, except just make it face to the outside. Get a stainless steel fermenter, place it underneath it, then pump the boiling water from your boiler into the stainless steel fermenter. Once it's all pumped through, seal the fermenter and place it aside. Then add your water for the mash, add your grain, do the mash as normal, and by the time you get to sparging, this water will have cooled down. Depending on ambient temperature, it might be at about 70 degrees or so. What you can do then is just boil up a little bit of water in your kettle to adjust the temperature of it. So I've been mashing at 68 degrees Celsius for 60 minutes now, as per the recipe I'm doing. So it's time for me to do my mash out. So for this, I'm just gonna press the set button, and I'm doing my mash out at 75 degrees Celsius. Enter that in. And I'll put the element variation switch on normal, using 2 kilowatts to get it up to 75 degrees Celsius quick, and I'll just leave that on normal from now on. And this is also just how you do step mashing. So it just got to 75 degrees. So I'm just going to let this recirculate for 10 minutes. After 10 minutes, we'll start the sparging. It's been 10 minutes, so I can switch the pump off now and remove the recirculation pipe. Put that aside. And just take your brass knob and put it on the end of the discharge pipe. And just again, always have a fitting on the end of the discharge pipe. So I can remove the glass lid now, put that aside. Take the handle and you'll see 2 holes in the basket. So just insert the handle into there. And we'll be lifting the basket up now. So just easier with 2 hands. Just lift that up. Twisted 90 degrees. And you'll see the brackets should just rest on the support ring there. And I can now start pouring my prepared sparge water and rinse the grains. And now with the basket resting on the support ring, you can push down the top perforated plate just until it sits on the grains. There we go. Take off the overflow inlet, and take your top pipe cap, put that on. This is just so no water gets in there because you want all the water to rinse through the grains. So get your prepared sparge water. So for this recipe, I'm sparging with 12.5 litres of water, and just slowly pour this over the grains. And keep in mind to just sparge gently and slowly, and stop when it gets to about 10 millimeters above the perforated plate. So I've finished pouring over all my sparge water, and I've just let this rest on top of the boiler for a little bit, just so all the water has a chance to rinse through all the grains. And I can now remove the basket. So I'll just get the handle, place it in the hole again, and just lift this up. And I'll just pop this in here. And I can now remove the grains and give that a clean. But before I get to that, I will now switch my controller onto boil. Yeah. And make sure that the element variation switches are normal, because I want it to go from the sparge temperature, which is 75, up to boil quite quickly now. So it's just started beeping at me, and to turn this off, I just press the on button, hold it in for a bit, and then it'll just display the HH, and that means it's boiling. So I leave that on boil, and it's important now to get a paddle and to start stirring in the foam, otherwise it will cause a boil over, and this is just the proteins rising up. So just gently pat this down, and this will take between 5 and 10 minutes, so you just have to stand there and stir it. So I've just finished stirring the foam through, and I can stop stirring now. It won't cause a boil over anymore. So generally recipes will boil for between 60 and 90 minutes, and today I'll be boiling for 60 minutes. While your wort is boiling, you'll be adding your hops, and the hop additions are divided into stages. And generally adding hops early into the boil, this will give you bitterness, and adding hops more to the end of the boil, this will give you aroma and flavour. And each recipe is different depending on what kind of beer style you want. So I'll be adding my bittering hops right now. Just sprinkle that in. I'll just continue to boil. So I've just added my 0-minute hop addition. The boil has come to an end. So I'll just switch the boil off now, and I'll let those hops sit there for the flavour and aroma to infuse while that's happening, I'll start preparing my chiller to start cooling the wort. So I've prepared my chiller and placed it on the boiler, and I'll just tell you what I did here. So I've just taken the glass lid, put that on the boiler, put the chiller on top of the glass lid, and I've connected the short hose that we assembled the plastic knob onto, just connect that to the discharge pipe, and at the back here you'll see a ball valve tap at the bottom with a hose coming out of that I've just placed into the hole in the top of the glass lid. Now what I'll do is I'll just turn the pump on, and hot wort will just flow through the coil, down through this pipe, back into the boiler, and this is just to sterilize the copper coil, and generally let this run for about 5 minutes. So while the wort's running through the coil and sterilizing it, I'll just show you the tap water hoses. So I've connected my kitchen tap adapter to the tap there, and I've placed the long hose coming from the bottom of the chiller into the tap there, and this is where cold water will run and go up through the outside PVC pipe here, and the long hose coming from the top, that's just resting in the sink, and this is your water discharge hose that will just drain back into the sink. So while the wort's just running through the coil, I've also just prepared my fermenter by sterilizing it and making sure it's nice and clean. So this has been running through for about 5 minutes now, and I'm going to start turning on my cold water and starting to cool. So I'll just leave the wort out hose into the glass lid just for the time being, and I'll turn on the tap water, make sure it's on cold, turn that on. It doesn't have to be super fast. There we go. You can just see it's draining out there. Okay. Now what I'll do is I'll just turn the tap, the ball valve tap, just on halfway. We'll get a shot of that soon. And I'll just feel the wort out hose, and it's already starting to cool down a lot. Over here where the hot wort's going in, it's going in very hot, and this is already cooling down quite a bit. So I'll just wait for that to cool down nicely as the cold water flows through and the heat's being transferred. Okay. So about right now, so I'll just turn the pump off just to stop the wort from flowing through. I'll just wait for the wort to. Yeah. And now what I'll do is I'll just place this hose into the hole on top of the fermenter, turn the pump back on, and I'll let that cold wort just run into the fermenter now. So I'll just show you the ball valve tap on the chiller here, where the wort is flowing out into your fermenter. The more it's open, when it's like that, the more it's open, the faster the wort will flow through, and the hotter it may come out. If you need it to be a bit cooler, just close it a bit. It'll flow through a bit slower, and it'll come out a bit cooler. So just from feeling that, I have it at about halfway, and it's coming up nice and cool now. So while the wort's running into the fermenter, it's always best to just keep your fermenter sealed, just to prevent any contamination. But you can just quickly open it up. I'll show you what's happening in there. The wort's just running through, and you can just collect a little sample of the wort there to take your original gravity reading. Just seal that up again. So I've just got into the end of the chilling here. If I look through the hole in the glass lid, I can see the filter, and I can see some white foam in the hot wort in and over here. So I'll just switch the pump off, but before I do that, I don't want any wort stuck in my copper coil, so I could go to the ball valve and just switch that off, then turn your pump off and turn the ball valve back on, and just wait a little while, and what this will do is it will just clear all the wort from your copper coil. You'll see it there, it's just going up there. I'll take this out. And I'll just press through here, I'll just wait for it to clear out there as well. There we go, and once that's nice and clear, I can remove the copper coil and I can turn the tap off. The temperature in my fermenter is at 24 degrees, so I can pitch my yeast now. So I'll just open this up. Just sprinkle this on over the top of the right there. So next I'll just do the clips up, put an airlock in place and let this ferment. So now that you've finished making the beer in the Grainfather, just keep in mind that fermentation is also very important to a beer. So follow the instructions on what temperatures you should ferment at and for how long. And also just remember to make sure all the bottles and kegs are nicely cleaned and sterilized before you use them. And before you know it, you should be enjoying your own all grain beer. Cheers.